Welcome to Terror in Tandem, a podcast about finding entertainment in the macabre. Hosted by the knowledgeable and lovable Laura and Richard Mathiasen. Each episode we discuss the horror genre, from books to film to TV and beyond. Sometimes, even from the beyond. You can find us online at terrorintandem.com and on Instagram at terrorintandem. What?
1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
Oh, nice.
I'm just getting us into the... That was like my childhood laughter.
Yeah. La, 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 la.
Yeah, because this episode is all about evil children.
Evil children, or, to shorten it, children.
That's
no,
fair.
that is unfair. We actually really do like kids, but
or referred to as enfants terribles.
yes, les enfants terribles. Wonderful. I apologize for that. What just happened? But yeah, we're before we do that, let's check in. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm caffeinated. So
Oh boy. You guys might want to listen to this on...
half speed?
No, God, that would last forever.
Quarter speed.
Just delete this episode.
Download it though. Definitely
download it.
We
You
love
don't
it.
have to listen. Just kidding. You're already here, so you might as well listen to Caffeinated Richard.
No, I'm
And,
feeling great. I'm feeling great.
know.
I had a great morning, productive, feeling good. It's a beautiful day. What's not to love?
This is so boring.
Yeah.
So this episode, we're
I
going to
get that a
talk
lot.
about one of the tropes of evil children. which
Evil
I
children.
think we've mentioned a couple times already.
Yes. But like a lot of the tropes that we talk about and we associate with movies, this is an old fear. I mean, essentially as old as having children. And in researching, sort of the origins of the evil child trope, it essentially took me to the origins of mankind itself.
Oh,
It was,
boy.
no, seriously.
Wow.
Like
That's intense.
it's there is a duality to, and I say this of course as a childless person, there is a duality towards having and raising children in that you ideally as a parent want them to succeed and flourish, and you offer them every opportunity and resource in order to do so, for them to do so. But at the same time, you are essentially training and raising your replacement.
Or, you're training a future adult.
Yeah, well, it all depends on your outlook. If you are someone who views death and whatnot as just a natural part of the cycle of life, then raising a child to one day surpass and quote unquote replace you is a perfectly natural, wonderful thing to do. If you are a megalomaniac or just a jerk, that might be intimidating and horrible to you. I think one of the more famous and earlier examples would be Oedipus. The fear that men, I guess, apparently have that their sons will murder them and marry their wives.
Well, to your point, if you think about sort of legacy and succession of,
Exactly.
types of kings and other royalty that have taken over, the firstborn child or the firstborn male child, that's, you're raised from the very beginning to become the king of a country.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just boils down
regardless of what temperament you have.
There are like essentially two kinds of father figures. There are the kinds that have the mentality that they are planting trees, the shade of which they will never sit under. And then there are those that are hoarders. They never give up their position. They are afraid of irrelevance. They hold on far longer than they should. And they don't cede to the next generation because they don't want to. So I think that second one, it's a very natural fear, and that is essentially the creation of the bad seed trope. I mean, we see it all over the place. It's not just in horror movies.
And it's not just men raising their children.
No,
it's women too. Because
exactly.
if we see what just happened with King Charles coming into his reign is only because his super old mom finally passed away. She was never going to give him the crown while she was still living.
Nope.
Which is really interesting to me because that is essentially what you have children for.
One would hope.
And he was the likely and only successor, and now his reign is going to be short-lived. And I would love to have known how, and I'm sure it is, very calculated on her part, because now William will be the next successor of the crown. And I feel that Charles was never really a good representation of what she wanted that role to be.
Are you not a fan of Queen side piece? All respect. Welcome to Royal Chat with your hosts, Laura and Richard.
No, I just think
Lady
it's really
Laura.
interesting that it's, you can, in tradition, you can create. I'm not saying Charles is evil. I'm not saying he's not, but you can create an evil child.
Yes.
By denying them their birthright.
And we all await the reign of terror yet to be unleashed by King Charles.
I'm not saying that.
So anyway, the fear of children, it's not just in horror movies though. I mean, you know, there's the joke of like scary teenagers and things like that. It's just, it seems like there's always an existing fear amongst older members of society, no matter what time period you're in, of the younger members of society. And I think some of that is you're staring at your replacements. You're staring at a youth and a vitality that you used to have and never will again. So there's like a little bit of envy that's built in there. I mean, I think we've all felt that. You know, when a young person says something and you're just like, Jesus, kid, you know, talk to me in 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking necessarily about bullies or mean kids or kids that, you know, are sarcastic or rude. We're really talking about evil.
Now, you know, any horror writer or horror creator worth their salt is going to basically take any human fear, no matter how small or significant, and turn it into something.
Well, it's really the juxtaposition of having this sweet young character be this monster capable of like duplicitous, murderous acts.
That's the other part of it, is it just makes for a really great villain, because the nicer side, let's go back to the first group of parents, the nice folks, it's a subversion of your expectations.
Yeah.
You know, you see a cherubic little angel.
Or you hear a child's laughter.
Yeah, that sort of thing. But in a certain light, it's creepy as shit.
Yeah.
Like basically every Italian horror composer of the 60s and 70s figured that out by having child's laughter in the soundtrack. You know, there's always like, la 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 la, you know, it's just crazy and scary, and you don't quite know why, because you're like, ostensibly that's supposed to be like clowns, like I get they're supposed to be funny but they're not.
Yeah,
like children singing is supposed to be sweet, but I don't know, in a certain light it's very ominous.
If you listen to the music playing for the children Flowers in the Attic movie,
oh shit,
because that's very, it's like slowed down.
Yeah.
It's like, la, la, you know, it could be like a lullaby, but it's not.
Not even close to the scariest thing those kids do.
No.
But
they're not really evil. Those kids aren't evil.
No. Well, no, I mean, you know, but, oh God, it gets murky.
And a child can be definitely scarier than a grown-up in a costume a weapon.
Well, they're a wolf in sheep's clothing. You know, they can infiltrate. They can get in there, and people don't expect any sort of violence to come from them. So it's all the more unexpected and shocking when it does.
Mm-hmm.
It's a trope that, you know, we call it bad seed. And honestly, I did a little bit of research into that term because bad seed, what immediately pops into my mind is the movie, right? The 1956 movie Bad Seed with Patty McCormick, you know. And what I didn't realize is that's based on a play, which itself was based on a novel. And the earliest reference I could find to the term bad seed is the novel. I think it was invented in the 50s. So, but we all kind of know that it describes...
I'm sure it's from like agriculture or farming.
Yeah, you know,
a bad seed can spoil the entire crop.
No, it's more like a bad seed when planted will grow into something wrong.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the movie, Patty McCormick is this, you know, really like sweet little 1950s Norman Rockwell looking kid who's evil as shit. And that has been repeated over and over and over and over. You know, one of my favorite examples being The Good Son with Macaulay Culkin. And
I was going to say that. That was one of my first examples.
Oh, we're going to get into that? Great.
Well, yeah. I mean, we can just get into it now.
I'll leave it for you. It's fine.
Okay.
We can talk about it.
I think we can just jump right into it right now.
You want to?
Why not? Because it was one of my first examples of...
I saw that in the theater.
Bad kids. Like real evil.
Yeah.
Where everybody's fooled. Macaulay Culkin's character fools everybody here,
and
especially
casting
coming off of My Girl
and Home Alone.
It fooled the audience, yeah.
It fooled everybody.
Well,
no one
he's
expected.
A little shit in Home Alone,
but he wasn't evil.
Yeah, but he was a little shit.
Look what you did, you little jerk.
But so for those of you that don't know, Macaulay Culkin played a psychopath.
In The Good Son.
In The Good Son with Elijah Wood.
Love Elijah Wood.
And you can tell that he is enjoying what he's doing.
He is a true sadist.
Yeah. And it was released at the height of Macaulay Culkin's stardom. So it really, like I said, it also threw the audiences for a loop.
I was pretty young when it came out. I saw it in the theater, and I think the reason I snuck it past my super strict parents was because Macaulay Culkin was in it, and no one was expecting him to be...
And Elijah Wood. It's like two kids.
Two cuties. Aw.
Two best friends, brothers.
Also, Elijah Wood, what a amazing career he has had. Like, I have such respect for like how he's matured, and now he's, you know, doing a lot of horror movies, honestly.
Well, he's in the new season 2 of
Yellow Jackets, right? I know. He's always popping. So that's the thing. He's got that Lord of the Rings money now, so he just kind of does whatever the fuck he wants. And he's got great taste, so he just pops up in something cool now and then.
Do you want to talk a little bit about these kid actors?
Or
we can just
I want to talk about
reset.
I want to talk about a little bit what makes a bad seed. Are there qualities and characteristics that are...
Well, when a man and a woman love each other...
Go on.
When a woman wants to raise a child, she can go to a place...
Get the pump. All right. I'm going to take this pill.
Okay.
Like, are there universal characteristics of a bad seed? And I would argue yes and no. There are definitely a couple of sort of ground rules to being a bad seed that you find basically everywhere. But then there's, you know, they're each tailored to their own specific narrative.
Tell us about it, Stu.
I don't know. One that I could think of is precociousness. Now, it seems to me like pretty much every bad seed character that I can think of is always wise beyond their years. They act, at least in the moments when they're not performing, quote unquote, they act like adults.
Even if that's silent knowing.
Yeah. It's a look on their face, an expression.
It's a paying attention. It's like that you understand adults in a way that you're not meant to.
That's the thing. A lot of bad seeds, we're talking, depictions of literal children. They're manipulators. They're able to position adults and exploit the adults' prejudices, being like, that they're sweet little angels who could do no wrong. They're to use that to their advantage. Now, to be able to think on that level at a young age means that there's sort of a commonality that they're also brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Like, bad seeds aren't typically dummies. They might maybe employ bad kids who are dumber than them as like minions. The way like Draco Malfoy had Crabbe and Goyle and J.K. Rowling as his horrible minions.
Mm-hmm.
So they're definitely like they're precocious, and sometimes that's because they are tiny adults pretending to be children. Sometimes that's because they're just straight up kid geniuses who are psychos, and sometimes it's because they are kids who are possessed with the spirits of adults. Whatever it is, demons. But there's always something, man. You always look at a bad seed and you're like, that kid ain't fucking right, man. Like, he's not in the backyard playing with GI Joes. He's like,
yeah. Sometimes if they
melting them,
say set up a kid to fall off of a swing set or something, and you see they smile or smirk in the background.
Yeah.
It's that knowing how to manipulate, knowing how to get away with things. If you think about Toy Story.
What was the next door neighbor?
Yeah.
Was it Randy Newman? I think it was evil Randy Newman. Yeah.
That was Sid.
Right. Yeah.
And he basically took all of these toys and created evil monsters from them.
But they weren't evil.
And he would destroy them.
Yeah.
And he would...
the spider with the baby face.
And trap them. And, he was the evil.
Yeah.
He was trying to make them evil, but
was he just hurting?
The toys never were.
So can I, before we get into some examples, can I get real with you for a second?
Sure.
I have a love-hate relationship with this trope. Because as someone who has, from a young age, had a more like macabre sensibility. I've always been interested in the darker side of things. There's a part of me that resents this trope, painting, children who maybe aren't all flowers and sunshine as being evil. I was of age when, the Columbine shooting happened. I was in high school, and that horrible tragedy led to the unfortunate demonization of anybody who was into goth or, wore
video
black
games.
Or played video games. Yeah, bullshit like that. And it happens today. And so I've always been like wary of this trope. Like, I do enjoy it because it leads to some great stories. But on the other hand, I'm like,
well, what I appreciate in this trope and why I think it's a distinction from what you're saying is that most of these children, these evil children, as represented in fiction, aren't bullied into their behavior.
Well, I have some examples.
I said.
Yeah, no. I get what you're saying.
I said as a trope, they're basically born this way.
I think you're
not shaped this way.
I think your faith in the modern person's ability to tell the difference is admirable. I just think a trope like this, I have mixed feelings about not because of the trope itself, but because some people can't make that separation. It's like whenever there's a horrible mass shooting and there's always talk of, mental illness. And there's a side of me that is very bothered by that because there's, in some people's minds, a conflation between anyone with any sort of mental illness and violence. And I think that is damaging and unfair and, awful. I just want to lay that out before I start giving examples of this trope, which I do like. I just think it's important to put all your cards on the table. That's it. My cards tabled.
Okay.
So why don't we take a break before we start popping into
Okay.
famous, horrible little monsters?
Okay.
Nothing beats a warm bowl of soup for those days when you're not quite feeling yourself, am I right? Well, the demons wearing your body like a rotting meat suit may be legion, but there's only one thing they're craving on an excellent day for an exorcism. Why not treat yourself, and everyone inside you, to Reagan's Home-Style Pea Soup? Every serving of Reagan's Home-Style Pea Soup contains all the nutrients both your body and the archlords of hell inhabiting it need to survive another night chained to your bed. Holy water burning your skin? Well, not only is every bowl of Reagan's Home-Style Pea Soup delicious and filling, but it's also a salve for divine burns on your corrupted flesh. Rub a little pea soup on it, my dad used to say. And my dad was the devil, so he would know. Reagan's Home-Style Pea Soup is designed to be absorbed quickly, so don't worry about artillery barfing all over those mean old priests. Your hideous human flesh will still feel satisfied, no matter how much of it ends up on your mom and that priest you might have, but definitely did just kill with your mind. Reagan's Home-Style Pea Soup. Just like your mother used to make before she sucked in hell. This is a fake ad for a fake product on a horror-themed podcast. We do not condone nor endorse becoming possessed by demons and murdering exorcists, no matter what your mother does in hell.
And we're back.
Hello!
So let's talk about some of these child actors, first of all.
Awesome.
So I want to just talk about actually some of their experiences on set.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for saying that. I'm really excited that you're going to talk about it because I have always wondered that. Damn.
Why are their parents letting them do such a dark movie? Wow, that must be traumatizing.
Yes. And I have although I don't know what you're about to talk about, I do have a guess as to some of the names that may be on your list.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with Lisa and Louise Burns.
Oh.
They were 12 when they were in The Shining.
Yes.
And they had to have a parent accompanying them at all times on set.
I mean, this is a set with, this is the scariest movie, one of the scariest movies ever, and it's a set with Jack Nicholson and Stanley Kubrick. So parents need to be there.
And then when they were asked, what they thought about being in the movie, they said, well, we're naturally spooky.
Wow.
And they did have to practice their timing of saying things in unison. And they would work on...
So that's not just a thing every twin is born able to do?
No.
Okay.
Well, yeah, no. And they said they worked on saying their lines in like a very hollow, otherworldly way.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, well done, ladies. You did a great job.
Yeah. What the parents said is that the kids were concerned... everybody on set was really concerned that the fake blood scene of when they're murdered would really be traumatizing for them.
Yeah, there's that flash where you see their dead body. Yeah.
So the makeup artist showed them how he made the fake blood.
Wow.
And what it took to make it look like the real thing. And he let each of them keep a bottle of it, which they still have.
Oh, I love, man, heroes everywhere. You know what I'm saying?
So like
there's
it's
always,
destigmatized.
they don't always wear capes.
Yeah, they're like movie magic.
What a wonderful person that makeup artist is. Like, a beautiful, creative act of kindness. I love it.
Also in The Shining.
And they still have the blood bottle.
I know.
That's so dope.
Also,
these ladies are amazing.
Also in The Shining, Danny Lloyd, who played Danny, had no idea that it was a horror movie.
I heard that story. I know.
Stanley Kubrick shielded him from it and the gruesome parts by telling him the project was a drama and making sure that he was offset during all of the serious scenes, like when Dick Halloran was murdered.
Yeah.
And he wasn't shown the film when it was completed, but instead only a 10-minute child-friendly version.
Holy cow. Boy, if only it had shown like a tenth of that sensitivity towards poor Shelley Duvall.
Yeah, I know.
That's fascinating. I knew the story that he didn't realize he was in a horror movie, but I didn't know the lengths that Stanley Kubrick went to. And
because he was much younger than the twins.
yes, and knowing Stanley Kubrick as the complicated auteur that he was, I wonder if that was a kindness in service to the film, or kind of I think it was a mix of both.
Let's talk about how Tobe Hooper didn't protect the kids on the set of the Poltergeist movie.
Yeah.
So when the character of Robbie is attacked by that possessed clown, played by actor Oliver Robbins, he actually became strangled because of a malfunction of the mechanical doll's parts. And Tobe Hooper thought that reaction was an acting choice. And then he noticed that Oliver's face started turning blue, so they had to stop filming.
Yeah.
So
that's
here
not
we
an
have
acting
two
choice.
very separate approaches to, how kids are treated on the set. Now, I'm not saying that one is I don't think Tobe Hooper's approach is a bad approach.
No,
but
let's not put him in the same bucket as Jonathan Landis, who straight up got 2 children killed on his movie.
Yeah. So that's...
And then had a wonderful son of his own who went on to do wonderful, wonderful things too. Oh, what a great legacy the Landises.
One of the things we can really talk about is The Exorcist, because that's obviously one of the biggest most famous kid.
That's the one I thought you were going to mention, and I was hoping you were, because, again, complicated feelings.
Played by Linda Blair, who
that's
was
legit
12.
my favorite movie.
Yeah.
And
she's
yet,
12 at the time.
Yeah.
She actually suffered a pretty bad spinal fracture while she was filming the thrashing scene, to the point that it was something she had to deal with for her entire life.
Yes.
Normally, they wouldn't have allowed the actor to do that. I mean, now they won't. There's a lot of rules and regulations against it, where they'll have stunt people.
William Friedkin is a
freak.
He's a controversial figure.
Yeah.
A brilliant director, and like a lot of brilliant directors, a controversial figure.
She also developed a lifelong aversion to cold, because during the exorcism scenes, the room temperature was lowered with air conditioning, so the actor's breath could be visible.
Oh, yes.
She was in a nightgown the whole time.
This is well before the advent of CGI, so when you saw movies where people's breaths were misting, that's because it was fucking freezing on set.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody there is cold as hell, and all the equipment has special blankets around it so it doesn't freeze.
Right, but not her. She was in just a nightgown, 12 years old. And
yeah, they really put her through the ringer.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's complicated. It really is, because by any standards, I don't like when people say things like, "Oh, well, today." It's like, well, you should have known that was wrong then too.
Yeah.
Don't use hindsight as an excuse. You hurt a child.
Well, here's an interesting way in which one of the kid actors was cast because of hurting the producer.
Interesting thing though about Linda Blair, she did come back for The Exorcist 2.
Yeah.
Directed by John Boorman. I wonder if she agreed to that because she was more the protagonist of the movie and different director.
Maybe it's like a way to close things out, closure, taking control back.
Side note, it's a real stinker, but it's an interesting one. You won't regret watching it, because it's so weird and fascinating. And John Boorman he directed Deliverance. He's an incredible director. He made a very strange movie, and a real notable turn by James Earl Jones in that one. Just watch it. It's wild. Louise Fletcher too.
So according to the producer of The Omen, Harvey Bernard, Dick Donner.
Richard Donner, director of Superman.
Dick Donner is what he called him.
Wow, I've never heard anyone refer to him as Dick Donner.
Well, I guess you don't know him like that. But doesn't everybody call Martin Scorsese Marty? Do you know what I mean? They all call him Marty.
I don't know about everybody. I do. On our weekly Zooms.
So anyway,
Marty or Marty baby.
Harvey Bernard said that Richard Donner, when he was auditioning kids,
Dick Donner?
Harvey Spencer Stevens, who was later cast as Damien.
In the first one.
Yeah. When Richard Donner yells action, the kid hit him right in the balls and kept pounding him in the balls. And even when Donner called cut, the kid kept going. So they knew that he was the right one to cast.
What?
Mm-hmm.
I
Because it was basically like, I want you to hit Richard Donner. Like, telling the kids that was their prompt. You need to go and, like, come right up on him and hit him.
And he just started wailing on his balls. On Richard, director of Superman. Well, I think The Omen was
Dick
before
Donner's
Superman.
Dick Donner.
Wow.
Yeah.
Also a director of the Lethal Weapon series later on. Rest in peace, and your balls as well.
Rest in pieces.
Goodness, that is one way to get into a movie. Not a casting choice I would necessarily recommend doing. I don't think that would work if you're like...
Or not a casting practice.
Maybe if you're trying out for a David O. Russell movie, he might like it.
The choice was good.
Yeah.
But not how to get there is not good.
Or like a John Waters movie, and he's like, oh,
or
again.
Or do it to like a dummy or something.
Jeez Louise.
And then my final sort of what I wanted to just give a little insight to is Millicent Simmons. She played Regan Abbott in A Quiet Place 1 and 2.
Oh, yes. And very good.
Yeah. She suggested an improv to John Krasinski that made him cry. So in the original script, he signs "I love you" to her, and then she suggested that he also sign "I've always loved you," because the characters have kind of a tense relationship throughout the film. And she said, I think he needs to say "I've always loved you," because that covers the difficult period and then what happens next, because he knows what's coming.
I just want to make a suggestion that we clear up the dust in our luxury properties, because it's getting into my eyes and affecting me. I know exactly which scene you're talking about. Mm-hmm. That is
it was
lovely. And for the maybe millionth time on this episode, Jesus, these kid actors today, man.
Right.
That's
what I'm saying.
Of their emotional range. Are they like just reincarnated? Speaking of weird kids, are all kid actors today just older kid actors reincarnated into new tiny bodies?
Or older actors that are now kids now.
Buster Keaton is in Stranger Things. It's just wild. That is amazing. So now that we've talked about, listen, it's important to acknowledge that
she wasn't an evil child.
No. No. She's just.
I just want to talk about kid actors in these horror movies.
Oh well, I guess if you're one of the sound sensitive aliens, she's evil. Maybe they tell stories about her, especially the second movie. So when discussing Hollywood and the trope of bad seed, you do have to acknowledge some of the things that you just brought up. Is that the treatment of children in those environments has not always been great. I think that is changing. You hear stories about the Rupert Grint, Daniel Radcliffe, and Emma Watson growing up basically on the set of Harry Potter, and how they had school sessions.
You have to have school. You have to have breaks.
Yes.
You can only work like a certain amount of hours.
Yes, because they are children.
Yeah, child labor laws have been really reconstructed and enforced around.
And that is good.
Mm-hmm.
We should acknowledge the difficult past and also acknowledge the progress that has been made. Now, that being said, let's talk about some creepy kids.
Yeah, go for it.
So I want to give a shout out to just some real standouts of our wonderful malicious minors. Now, first one I want to get into, it's a slight cheat. And I can't exactly say why if you haven't seen the movie, because it ruins the movie. But Esther from Orphan, and the recent sequel, Orphan Kills. I think that's what it was. I haven't seen the sequel yet, but I have seen the 2009 original, and it's really good.
For those of you that don't know, it's about a couple that lose their unborn child and then adopt a 9-year-old girl from an orphanage.
Played by Isabel Furman, who is not 9 years old, but let me tell you, it works.
Yeah,
it works.
It's definitely a demon seed.
I haven't seen the sequel, but this is an actor playing a much younger role than she is. I don't remember how old she was when she made the first movie, but I believe she was in her early 20s, something like that. And it is believable, and it does work.
When they bring her home, some freak accidents start to happen.
They sure do.
And it seems like they might have been orchestrated.
Now, the reason I chose Esther...
She's super unsettling if you look at her, like, glassy, evil stare.
Esther is basically if Wednesday Addams was legit evil instead of campy evil. So, like, the way she dresses, the way she acts, her precociousness, her otherworldly air, she doesn't act like a child. Kind of,
how proper she is.
In a similar way to Let the Right One In or Let Me In. These children that are old behind their eyes. And you look at them and you might visibly see the face of a child, but you're not really looking at a child. Next one I want to jump into is one of my faves. It's not the best movie, but it's Malachi.
Well, let's just give a shout out because I think we should talk about in quick order.
I just shouted out Malachi.
All the Stephen King books to film versions featuring evil children. We already talked about The Shining. We're going to talk about Children of the Corn
with Malachi and his little...
After that, we'll talk about it. But also, Pet Sematary to some extent. It wasn't Gage's fault.
No, Stephen King...
But he came back evil.
Stephen King writes child heroes and child villains.
Yeah.
He does them both very well.
So Children of the Corn
is
a short story.
Quick aside, though, about Stephen King. As a man now in his later years... still able to write children believably and effectively. And would that we could all stay so in touch.
Yeah.
I mean, that is really something. Mm-hmm. That's not easy to do.
With his most recent iteration of Fairy Tale.
And anybody who's tried to set up their grandparents' internet knows what I'm talking about.
Basically this couple is driving
to a job interview.
Country.
Yeah. I think that the guy's got a job interview.
And they're driving along the countryside, populated with rows and rows and rows of corn. And they come upon an accident.
Yeah.
And they get sort of trapped in this town for a little while.
The thing about this town is no adults.
It's only inhabited by children.
Anywhere.
Under the age of 18.
Now, Malachi is like... He's basically the reason he makes the list here. A few reasons. He first off runs an evil Logan's Run cult, like you said, where no one over 18 makes it. They also worship an elder god called He Who Walks Between the Rows. He dresses like an evil Amish guy, which is cool. And side note, if the Amish ever broke bad, I think they would be formidable. They would have incredible crafting and MacGyver skills, be able to build amazing fortifications, and survive. Let's just hope they stay peaceful. I worry about it every day.
Isn't it Behind the Rows?
I think it is He Who Walks Behind the Rows. But you know what? Just between you and me, every once in a while, he's been known to walk between them. So he worships an elder god, He Who Walks Behind the Rows. He is precocious, obviously, because he is a child who...
His name is Malachi.
I mean,
even
goodness.
Just hearing
he
that
wears
name,
all black.
Even just hearing that name now.
Yes, it makes you nervous. In the movie version, Linda Hamilton is in it, and she gets menaced and fucked up. So that's pretty hard to do. And he says awesome things like, "We have your woman, Outlander," which is not something good kids normally yell. Also, I forgot to mention possibly the most evil thing about him is he's ginger.
Right.
Malachi. Do you have any creepy kids you want to talk about before I?
Well, not specific kids because they're all in this, but The Brood.
Oh man, that's on my list too.
It's an old movie.
It's a fantastic early David Cronenberg entry.
Yeah.
One of his 70s ones where
it's about a man and his murderous wife that's in a psychiatric hospital.
It is not, like a lot of his movies, not easy to verbally explain what it is, but let's just give the TLDR of a woman who forms an external uterus that births children who murder
Well, it's
people
because
she's
of
mad
the
at.
psychologist.
They are
They
extensions.
enlist a psychologist to come help.
Yes.
And the treatment plan is to do this, to like essentially create this evil brood of children.
By the way, the psychologist, played by a very, very handsome young Oliver Reed.
Just spoiler alert: the brood they're deformed, monstrous children.
They're literal extensions of her feminine rage,
And
birthed in an external uterus in like a bathtub.
Yeah, they
It's Cronenberg all
They
the way,
attack.
baby.
attack.
It's some good shit.
Yeah.
Watch it.
The other one, just because we were talking about Stephen King, is It. It's more about both the book and the movie. Obviously, the evil in the movie is Pennywise, but he is really targeting children. And there are some bullies. The Bowers gang, for example.
Oh, some of the worst characters in this book are children.
They're terribly murderous.
The murderous
Bowers.
homophobic gang.
Yep. And so basically Derry is this hell on earth of which there is no escape. And Pennywise is the ruler of this world, and he pulls people into his realm.
Really smart of Stephen King to always invent new towns that he's going to populate with monsters, because then no one gets mad at him. It's not like doing it in Charleston and everyone from Charleston's like, we invite Mr. King down here to see what we're really like.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm just going to make up a new town and then I can, put devils and clowns and, weird shit all over the place.
And one other book I just wanted to mention is called The Other by Thomas Tryon. I've brought him up before. He wrote Harvest Home.
Yes.
And it's about Holland and Niles Perry. They're identical 13-year-old twins. Niles is the good twin and Holland is the evil twin.
There's always one.
And
always,
they're spending the
ladies
summer.
and gentlemen, listeners, hold on. This has to be said. Every set of twins you've ever met in your life, one is good and one is evil.
That's not true.
That is absolutely true.
We know lots of twins.
And it applies to all of them.
So these twins go to spend the summer with family after their father dies a gruesome death. And although Niles loves his brother, he's trying to get him to behave himself. And who do you think committed the father's murder?
Okay, I get it.
One evil twin and one not.
You're giving me very knowing looks. And I want to
no,
translate those into
it's a conversation.
Audio.
Didn't know if you read it or heard of it.
I have not, but it's got a Cain and Abel vibe. Again, twins. So, gets more complicated with triplets. That's a whole side pod. So, back to creepy kid examples. I would be
It
remiss.
was a movie with John Ritter
Oh,
in the 70s.
love John Ritter. R.I.P. King. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the creepy kids from Village of the Damned.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Village of the Damned, it's been remade. John Carpenter quite famously remade it with Superman himself, Christopher Reeve. Speaking of Dick Donner, very always fascinating to watch Christopher Reeve in a non-Superman role. He was in plenty of them, but just so tied to that, Anyway, the remake is it's a rare Carpenter misfire. I'm going to level with you. Maybe worth a rewatch on my part, but I'm going to focus on the original. So, long story short, this entire town gets sick at the same time. But not only the town, anyone who enters the town gets sick. Mm-hmm. So the military cordons it off. They don't know what to do. And then everyone gets better. Yay! Except all the women of childbearing age are bearing children. All of them. Mm-hmm. Now, this leads to understanding and tolerance and community. No, I'm just kidding. Everyone blames them of being sluts. So, this takes place in America. I know that's a surprise. So they all give birth on the same day, earlier than one should, to children that all have white hair and weird eyes and grow up all weird and don't act like kids. And the local scientist is initially very fascinated with them, then realizes there's something wrong. They have mind powers. They act in sort of a cultish hive mind way. You learn that there's also a village in the Soviet Union that has these children, and they end up nuking it because this is very, very much an atomic age tale. So essentially the same thing happens to these kids. They nuke them. They blow them up because you can't have kids that aren't, normal. But the thing about Village of the Damned, it's really the aesthetic of these kids. There is really something to walking into a room and seeing a dozen children with the same hair and the same eyes, with the same expression on their face, staring at you.
Yeah.
It's whoo.
How could that not go well?
Yes. So, yeah, things go as you would imagine. I do quickly want to mention Gage from Pet Sematary. Mm-hmm. I know you talked about him a bit. Because he is an example of a good seed turned bad, and not through any fault or
like
action
I said
of his
earlier,
own.
it's not his fault.
Not at all. Gage is just a little guy who dies tragically, and whose dad, through an act of terrible grief and unimaginable hubris, brings him back, even though he's been specifically told not to do that, even though he already tried it with his cat, and his cat came back all dirty and weird. So he does it with Gage, and Gage comes back, and he does all the things that a bad seed does. Acts weird, has weird looks on his face. Yeah, he stabs Herman Munster in the Achilles tendon, and then a bunch of other places.
No, I hate that.
We do. Yeah, he hides in the stairs. Definitely make you think twice when you're walking down those open stairs.
Yeah.
Anything could be in there. Any twin could be in there.
Ooh.
Not the good one. So
one of the other twin movies. Oh, were you going to keep?
No, I mean the other example I wanted to give, because there are examples of quote unquote bad seeds that I am not sure they fit the bad seed, because bad seeds start out that way, in my opinion, like they're born wrong, whereas Gage was turned. Reagan was possessed. From The Exorcist. Damien from The Omen is a bad seed. He's literally the son of Satan. Mm-hmm. He shows moments of confusion and reluctance. Moments of them. But those are pretty quickly overridden when he's delighting in sending flocks of crows to kill his nanny or some shit. So the other one would be Carrie White. Poor yes. Carrie White.
Another Stephen King.
Because Carrie White is not a bad seed. Until she is. The thing is, give her different parents and a different setting, she could have been the savior of humanity. It's I think that's why the story remains so affecting, is because it is not at all an easy, low-hanging fruit swipe at the kids today. It's really a story about the failure of everyone around Carrie White. That's the real tragedy of the story. But then again, she does use her mind to murder an entire school full of people because they dump blood on her, mm-hmm. which I am going to go on record as saying is an overreaction. It is. I just want that said. So, as we discussed,
I have another twin, although I've not watched either iteration, I wanted to bring it up.
Do it.
Because, you know,
Of the
we've
danger of
mentioned
twins?
the evil twins
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
Is Good Night, Mommy.
Oh, well, listen. Okay. I'll step in. I've seen the original. Yes.
So obviously it's about twin boys, Elias and Lucas.
Yeah,
and
the
his
original-
mother becomes very distant after getting facial surgery.
And the important thing is the facial surgery leaves her face entirely covered by bandages.
Yes.
So she comes home.
Is it even their mom?
And also, who's acting weird? Is the mom acting weird? Or are the kids acting weird? They do really play with perception in this movie. And it's the same directing duo. We mentioned in a previous episode, the original, it's an Austrian film. The same duo that did the original just remade it for Amazon, starring Naomi Watts, queen of being in remakes made by the same director as the original.
Well, that's interesting because I wanted to talk about The Ring because that's
Everything I
also
say is
another
interesting.
evil child
Talking
movie.
about old Sadako.
Yep. I mean, we can talk more in depth about it. I think we've talked about The Ring quite a bit. But yes, there is basically a child who was thrown in a well.
Who, let's face it, she wasn't great before they
Nope.
did that, and that didn't make
And
her
we
better.
don't know. I mean, I
No,
think
no,
the
they-
origins of her existence are somewhat
That's
a
true.
little murky.
I mean, she did grow up like in a sort of cold research facility being experimented on, so that's pretty fucked up.
Yeah. Yes.
And then they threw her in a well, which
yeah, because she
again,
did
I want
what
to go
she
on record
was
as saying,
designed to
don't.
do.
I'm
which
against
is
that. We hear it
murder.
Terror in Tandem.
Murders with her mind.
Yes. And with curses and VHS tapes. The worst way to go.
Yeah, exactly.
And you die with a weird look on your face, so everybody who finds you is fucked up too. So, as we discussed, weird kids, bad seeds, there are definitely recognizable and ubiquitous tropes or characteristics of them. They're always off-putting, whether they're overly precocious, whether they have information they really shouldn't, whether they know how to do things they couldn't possibly know how to do, or they can move things with their mind or start fires.
Mm-hmm.
Or,
we didn't even talk about Firestar.
Oh, she wasn't a bad seed, though.
No. But she did wreak havoc.
On those that chased her.
Sure.
And her mom by accident. Anyway, sorry, Drew. So there are definitely some commonalities. I think that the most important one, though, is definitely that feeling you get.
Yeah.
When you're like, that kid ain't right, man.
They're born this way.
Yeah. When you're getting in your car after the party and you're like, the fuck is wrong with that kid?
You didn't mention your favorite of all bad seeds.
Which one?
Kevin.
You know, we do need to talk about him. I just feel like we've brought him up a lot.
We have.
And I know your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll discuss. We'll discuss. And then, you know, obviously the sort of personal flavor of the movie. Is it the devil? Is it mind powers? Is it a crazy religious mom and teenage bullies?
Yeah. Is it outside influence, nurture versus nature? Is it supernatural versus nature?
The long story
natural?
short is, for some fucking reason, we have always feared our children, which is weird because we love them too.
And now we're having robot children come in to make us fear robot children.
Oh, you know, it's not a horror movie, but now that you said that, everyone should watch the movie After Yang with Colin Farrell and
Jodie Turner-Smith.
Yeah, everyone should watch it. It's beautiful. It's not a horror movie, just, you know.
But Megan is.
AI and kids and all that.
Or Meath Regan.
Yeah, Meath Regan. Yeah, for sure. Bad seed, robot seed.
Yeah, bad wiring.
I just think it's fascinating.
Oh, that's what we could call it.
It's
My
fascinating.
wires are crossed.
Our relationship with children, our own children even, having this inherent, if not fear, apprehension.
We should do an episode on parents
I can't.
of bad seeds in horror movies.
I actually before we do that, would love to do an episode of
or just parents in general.
Worst
Because
parents in
of,
horror. Evil parents, worst parents.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah,
Nancy's
obviously.
parents are the
Nancy's parents.
living worst parents.
The worst.
Her father is the police.
Goddamn chief of police, John Saxon. Your
and
daughter
her
is
mom just basically is
sitting there drinking,
drunk in a nightgown the whole time.
dropping sleeping pills in her teenage daughter's drink. Like, this is what's best for you.
Yeah.
Amazing. No, obviously they're top of the list, but
don't worry, parents, we're coming for you.
We are definitely doing a bad bad episode about parents
just
for
a
sure.
Parents in horror movie.
We've got to do Mom and Dad from Nicolas Cage and Selma Blair. Anyway, Bad Seed, it's an interesting trope. It's one that continues. There are tons and tons and tons and tons of examples out there because we're just scared of kids. Yeah. We are. For another non-horror example, Harry Brown. Watch Michael Caine beat the fuck out of a bunch of kids. Why not? It's just a thing that happens now. That being said, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. And kiss your little kiddos goodnight for me.
We hope all of your seeds are bad.
No,
good. Or bad?
Good.
I don't know.
Bye.
Stop calling me seed.
Terror in Tandem is written, produced, and recorded by Laura and Richard Mathiasen, and edited and mixed by Richard Mathiasen. Our theme was written and performed by Carrie Denver, and all other music was written and performed by David Suspanic. All opinions expressed on this podcast are our own and should be taken as such. Thanks for listening, and please remember to give us a like, a review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. We're still